So there are different ways to drive change when you're working on transformation within an organization. And I believe that one way creates more lasting change, and another way creates change that kind of happens quite immediately, but maybe over the long term is actually hard to sort of sustain that kind of way of driving change. And this is the distinction I try and make between push transformation and pull transformation. So I thought I would just show you a few slides that I talked through what's the difference between push transformation and pull transformation, and how that can kind of impact the way that leaders drive change within their organizations. Because I really do believe that the way you drive change really matters in terms of whether or not that change is actually sustainable. And so you can push change into the organization. Again, I often joke that leaders try and drive change in the same way that they move furniture. They kind of lean in and try and push everybody to change. Or you can create what we call a pull transformation, which is different. Actually, it doesn't look like anything is happening, but what you're doing is you're trying to create to try and make the change attractive, so you can draw people in. That's kind of the goal of a pull transformation, and that creates kind of a few things that actually make these two approaches different. So push transformation is usually like based on leadership mandates. So the leaders create mandates, they come up with a strategy, and then they push the strategy throughout the organization. Where and usually these mandates are company wide. So everybody is supposed to kind of engage with the change all at once straight away. They have launch events and these big events where they're trying to bring everyone together in order to actually drive this change. Pull transformation actually doesn't go that wide. It picks what we call a path of least resistance. And this is usually early adopters. And early adopters are people that already believe in the change and want to participate. So if you use that as your path to kind of kick off the change, the energy the early adopters bring and any successes they have that we celebrate start to create that gravity that draws people in. So you can either start by working with early adopters, or you can start with a big launch and the leadership mandate and try and push change throughout the organization. And clearly, with my bias, you can tell which approach I prefer. Another difference between push versus pull transformation is that leaders sometimes try to create incentives to incentivize change. In some organizations, they might even put it as part of your end of year evaluation. If you engage in these behaviors that are connected to the change, that's how you get your bonus or a portion of your bonus, right? And so people will engage in the behavior just so that they get the bonus. Nobody's really checking whether people are actually buying in. Whereas with a pull transformation, what we really want is to create early wins. And those early wins and the stories we tell around those early wins, we want that to create an attraction that draws people into the change that we're actually trying to drive in the company. Another distinction between push versus pull transformation is that there's a lot of persuasion that happens with push transformation. Leaders are trying to persuade people to participate. So you'll find in organizations vice presidents, senior vice presidents walking around the organization with slide presentations before they've even had a success with the transformation. They're just pitching and pitching and trying to persuade and convince and coerce people into participating through using presentations. Whereas with a pull transformation, what we want is storytelling. So we use storytelling to attract people in. And storytelling is only effective if you have an early win. So that's why we want to create an early win with our early adopters, because then we can use the early win to derive the story, and that story creates the gravity that pulls people into the change that we're trying to drive. And so that's why we encourage leaders to engage in pull versus push transformation. So one way to really kind of land this distinction between push versus pull is to really say, like, push is applying force, like you're trying to kind of applying force to try and drive the change, versus pull transformation, which is creating gravity that draws people in to be part of the change. And so as we think about the transformations that we're running within our organizations, we have to think about how we're driving the change and the impact it has on the buy-in and the commitments of the people within the organizations. I think push is really important at the beginning. Maybe you need to do some pushing to kind of kickstart the movement. But as the movement starts to sort of move, you need to start paying attention to whether you're getting traction. And traction is usually about creating gravity that brings people to the change or attracts people to the change. And if you can do that, you can actually make the change inevitable.